Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. It is great to have as my guest today, Godless Engineer. Hello, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing there?
I am fine. And I am wearing my shirt that very few people have. Let me move my mic a minute. It says,
Yeah.
"What's up, heathens?"
Yeah,
You
not many people have it because I there was actually like a copyright claim or something like that, or I think something of that nature that got levied on it. That and the other heathen shirt, because it uses the word heathen, and apparently that's either trademark or copyrighted by somebody, and they didn't want me selling the stuff anymore, so I couldn't.
I think that's so weird. I think that's something that could be won in court, but the cost to do that would be prohibitive.
Hmm.
You'd have to be making tens of thousands of dollars on the merchandise to make it worth the price of fighting that.
Yeah. I really I was perfectly fine with taking the stuff down, even though it was a really big bummer because the heathen shirt I really liked. Like I
Mhm.
really loved wearing the heathen shirt, but um I I may try to do another one here soon, but just we'll just have to see.
Ox says LFMAO GE is still around.
I mean, I really don't know whenever people say that. I don't know if they're trying to be like backhandedly nice or something, like it's kind of like a backhanded comment or what, but I mean, I've been posting up content just
I know
every
you are
two
prolific.
videos a week. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're probably the most prolific person in the well, now that Paula G is working full time at it.
Yeah.
Um, he does a lot of live shows and then cuts them into segments and posts the segments. So he ends up posting something about every other day, which I really appreciate because I just don't have the time to watch those 2.5, 3 hour streams.
Hmm.
But when they get cut into segments, that's a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've started over on my Godless Engineer Clips channel.
Hmm.
I take like sections of my larger videos and I put them
Mm,
up there. And
hmm.
so like I take one section that's over one topic that's
Hmm.
normally between 5 and like at the longest like 10 minutes long, and
Hmm.
I just put them up there so that it's a nice little short encapsulated sort of video. And so I've got enough content to where I'm going through my backlog and I'm cutting it up and I'm putting it up over there. So I think I've had for about the past month or two, it's been pretty nonstop, like 5 days a week, posting a clip from older content over there. So if y'all like the older content, the GE Clips channel is kind of where to go for that.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know about that. I will have to look for that. I have the link to your regular channel in the description, but I wasn't aware that you'd started a GE Clips channel as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of something that I had started doing because I was like, it'd be really nice if I could just have like a single clip that's like
Hmm.
short, because people are like, I'm not going to watch a 30-minute video for this. And it's like, okay, well, here's a 5-minute short video about this one topic. Here you go. And so
Hmm.
I've just been kind of slowly building up the library on that channel, and in hopes that if nobody else uses it, I can use it to like point people towards more targeted like stuff.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, a thought that I had a couple of days ago um, was, I'm starting to think about end of life things and what I want at the end. And I thought, I really would like, if I'm still living in Alabama, I would like GE to do my funeral.
oh
I think
man,
it would be
that's
so cool to have you start my funeral with, "What's up, heathens and non-heathens?"
I mean, that would be a huge honor to do if that were ever the case. So I mean, I would make sure that I didn't disappoint, that's for sure.
Okay, I will let Robin know because Robin is the one that's kind of in charge of everything.
All right. How's Robin doing?
Robin is doing very well. Robin graduated in May, and Robin is now delivering pizzas for Domino's,
Oh,
which
all
is a
right.
really good thing because Robin was just so freaked out over trying to find a job that
Oh
we
yeah.
told don't try to find a professional job, just find a job. And part of a big part of the problem was the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, Robin was not able to work in the summer in between college years.
Right.
Um, and the third year, Robin could have worked, but he just absolutely freaked out over it, and so decided to do volunteer work instead. So until Robin graduated, Robin had actually never had a paid job,
Oh,
other than just working for someone dog sitting here and there, but never a regular job. And now that Robin has a job that actually pays, he works full time as delivering pizzas. He loves it. Um,
nice.
he, because a big part of it, Robin has a lot of anxiety, and most of the anxiety is about dealing with people. And
Hmm.
he loves delivering pizzas because he spends most of the time alone in his car. I don't have to deal with any people. And when he gets out to go deliver a pizza, he says, I deal with the person for 30 seconds, 2 minutes tops. And then I walk
Yeah.
away. And I'm probably never going to see them again. Or if I do, I'm still going to only see them for 2 minutes tops. And that works for him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, that sounds like a pretty good situation.
Hmm. He's gotten very close to his roommate, and his roommate graduates next May, and they're thinking about possibly moving to Colorado then.
Oh,
They
okay.
definitely want to get out of Alabama.
Yeah. Tell me about it. I
Mm.
wish I had that option.
Oh, really? Because of your job?
Well, because of job, because of Xander,
Okay,
his
yeah.
mom lives down in Decatur, and
Hmm.
so we're kind of just sort of here for right now,
Yeah.
and it would be nice, if we could move someplace else, but
You
for
could
right
easily,
now, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, you could easily move to Tennessee or Mississippi, but that isn't any better.
Oh no, have you seen what they're doing in Tennessee? Like Tennessee's
Yeah,
getting crazy.
it
Like
is.
the Tennessee legislature, they're just like, you know what? Fuck it, we're racist. Like I feel like that's essentially what they've started saying. It's like, no, we're just going to be all out racists right now, and that's just what we're going to do. All right, everybody's got to be cool with it really quick.
Mark Caesar has a suggestion for you. You could call
Uh,
your GE Clips G Clips.
G Eclipse. Yeah, that would be a fun play on words there.
Frankenstein says Granny has no
So
idea we have her planning on having her cloned so we can keep her. Oh, I forgot to put my banner up.
now hold
There
on,
we go.
that's what they did to Mitch McConnell, and you see how the fifth clone is turning out right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I feel really sorry for the man. Um,
Yeah. I really don't mean to joke about like health issues like that because I really
mhm,
think that he needs like some major medical like assistance, and
mhm.
I really don't think that he needs to be like representative of anything. Like
Yeah,
so, cuz I think he's a senator, right? Mitch McConnell?
yeah,
Yeah, he's a
yeah.
senator. He does not need to be a senator. He does not need to be, hopefully he's not behind the wheel. I would assume that he hasn't driven in 10 years.
Probably
Um,
not. Probably not. I remember when my grandfather reached his age, and we used to all be, Grandpa, want us to drive for you? Oh, Grandpa, we can drive for you. Yeah, no, no, let me drive. It's my car. I'll drive.
how old were y'all when y'all were saying that?
Early 20s.
Oh, okay. So y'all
He
could
died when I was.
definitely drive.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was 29 when he died.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, Which kind of takes me to a topic that would be, well, actually, let's start with this topic. I had an interesting discussion on Twitter this morning with someone who brought up a historical claim about the Bible that I have never heard before. And
Okay.
I'm curious as to what you think of it. His claim was that there is a new hypothesis that God dictated the creation account to Adam, and Adam wrote it down himself on one tablet. And that's where we get Genesis 1 through I forget what verse. And then the second tablet was dictated to Moses. And or no, was it? No, Noah. It was Noah. And then the rest of it was revealed to Moses. And so and I thought that was the weirdest thing I've ever seen, was someone claiming that Adam actually wrote down part of the Bible. Have you ever heard that?
I haven't heard of anybody saying that either Moses or either Adam or Noah wrote anything about the Bible that would be in the Bible. Most of the time, you just hear people saying that, well, Moses composed the first 5 books of the
Right,
Bible,
right. Mhm,
the Pentateuch, I believe is what
mhm,
it's called, and
mhm.
I've never heard of Adam writing anything. Um, it's interesting.
Yeah, because there's no record of any of humans writing anything before about 1500 BCE, isn't that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I, I haven't looked at what's the oldest writing. Let's see,
Let's see.
what is the oldest writing we have found?
I
The
could be
key
wrong on that
tablet.
point.
Let's see. Tablet is a product of Samaria and proto-cuneiform, dating to approximately 3500 BCE.
Okay, so 3500 BCE,
Right, but
which,
Adam would have been like, according to the Bible,
yeah, I was gonna say,
6,000
according to the young earthers,
years ago.
Adam would have lived about 4000 BCE, wouldn't he? Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, he would have lived about 4000 BCE. Um,
So
Frankenstein
just
says that's a testable hypothesis. At least with Santa, one can place a net in the chimney. How can we possibly test for or find evidence for dictations to Adam? Absurdities upon absurdities. Yeah. Well, and plus we don't have any original manuscripts. Why would anyone think that Adam wrote it when we I just I don't get it. I really don't. Um
and I don't know what evidence they would have for that. It just sounds like pure speculation on
Oh,
their
yeah,
part,
it
like,
does to me too. The only thing I can think is because the textual critics say that it's very clear that there was more than one author. And one of the reasons it's very clear there was more than one author is in Genesis 1, God is referred to only as Elohim, nothing else. And in Genesis 2, God is referred to as Elohim or Yahweh Elohim.
mhm.
And so it's quite clear that there's two different authors. And I think he's trying to make an excuse for why there's different authors.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the I believe the scholarly position, if I'm not mistaken, is the documentary hypothesis, meaning that there were multiple authors, and then later there were even a couple editors that stitched all these things together. And differentiating between how they refer to God is
Mhm.
how they differentiate the different authors and editors,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
just by how they refer to God. And I believe L, there's an interesting history to how like the beginning of the Bible and how that kind of blossomed out of these previous religions, because I believe El was actually a god in a different religion, and
Mm.
then the Jews broke off from that,
Mhm.
and they started practicing henotheism, which was that's a relatively new term for me, just
Mhm.
in learning, all about how religions develop and everything. Henotheism, which is what the Jewish faith is about, as far as what the Bible talks about. that's where you take one God and you worship that one God above all other gods. So
Mm,
you accept that there are other gods, like in the Bible when it talks about Baal, Molech, and all those other gods. They acknowledge that those gods like exist out there. It's just that the Jews were specifically worshiping Yahweh or El, or however they wanted to refer to him. And so they just worship Yahweh over all others. Like Yahweh was the supreme God, and all these other gods were like lesser gods that were
mhm,
not as powerful. And this translates into the New Testament pretty well, because uh, the New Testament represents the introduction of monotheism, meaning that there's only one God, but
mhm,
then there are these lower deities. Like they're still deities, like they're still divine beings, is what I mean. They're divine beings, but they're not God. There's
mm,
just the one God, and then there's these other divine beings, including Satan and like the archangels, the other angels that are up there and everything. So that's the big difference between Judaism and Christianity, is just the introduction to monotheism. A lot of people think that Judaism is monotheistic, and it may have become monotheistic
mhm.
eventually, but especially starting out, they were definitely henotheistic, and then they slowly progressed to monotheism, because right there around the so sorry, hold on one second.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Dr. Josh Bowen, I've heard him talk about, the progression, that there's no question that the early Hebrews who came from the Canaanites were definitely polytheists in the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah.
And El, the Yahweh was not even the most powerful of the gods at the time, when they first started worshiping him.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't know that part, but I mean, it would make sense if it would slowly progress to him being the most powerful one.
Mhm.
Um, I just know that in Judaism, they specifically chose to worship one God over others.
Eric Mishima says, I thought the flood was 4000 BC. And the answer to that is, according to answers in Genesis, the flood, they give an exact year. I think they might even give an exact date for when the flood was. And it was approximately 2500 BCE, but 4000 BC would have been creation, because they say that the world is only 6000 years old. And since we're in the year 2023, that that would put the beginning of time at about 4000 BCE.
Yeah, and which is really weird considering the fact that past 4000 BCE, in our past, like we have evidence of civilizations and all that, and it's just kind of like, where were we? It's, but well, so with the flood in 2000 BCE, you have this problem with like no other cultures in the world, referencing it. Like, of course, cultures that are near the sea, like on coastal regions and all this other stuff, like they have like flood legends because they're near the sea, like they're near bodies of water. And
Mhm.
but what you don't find are like flood legends like in the middle of Asia, or so like, or in the middle of a landlocked country.
Mm, interesting, interesting. I wasn't aware of that. When I've been arguing with people over that point, one of the things that I have argued with them is, well, of course, there's flood legends everywhere, because people tend to live near water, because people need water to live, and whenever you live near a river or a lake or a sea, there's going to be flooding from time to time. I said, fires are also a common occurrence, and every culture has some kind of mythology about a great fire, and yet nobody believes that there was a global fire.
Not yet.
Not yet. Although they do think one is coming, and they keep promising us that one is coming, and they've been promising us that for over 2000 years now.
Oh yes, God is gonna just dive into some Taco Bell burritos, and He's just gonna rain holy hellfire down on us. I'm just telling you.
Well,
Can't
it's
wait for
coming
that day.
September 22nd,
The 22nd.
of this month.
Oh, honey, while we're on the other side of the world, um, apparently the world's gonna end on the 22nd.
Oh, it's not gonna end yet. That's just when the nukes are gonna fall.
Oh, oh, apparently no, sorry. The nukes are gonna fall on the 22nd, and
Right.
then we're gonna live in a post-apocalyptic hellscape after that
Right, for 3 years, and then
in
everything
Europe.
ends. Yeah. This is from a video I covered a guy that's got it all figured out. His name is Abraham Ojeda, and, yeah, he's got this big prediction that that's when it's coming, and the
Oh
the
wow.
strangest thing about his prediction is that he says that World War III began when Russia invaded the Ukraine, and on September 22nd, Russia is going to nuke the United States. Then he talks about things, other things for a bit, and then he says, "Okay, so the nukes are gonna fall on Jerusalem because of any," and I'm wondering, how is Russia going to nuke the United States, but somehow hit Jerusalem instead? I mean, that is really bad aim.
Yeah. It sounds like, I mean, he's just sort of picking things, but I mean, I believe Jerusalem has the Iron Dome, right? I mean, I don't know if anything's getting through that.
Giselle's nukes in the Bible? Kinda, sort of. I mean, it does talk about in the end time that there's going to be it's gonna rain fire and brimstone, and that could possibly be nukes.
Mm.
It's one way to interpret it. Okay, we have a serious question here.
Okay.
Religion is just entertainment. So is the movie, music, entertainment industry bigger business than religion? If so, by how much? Oh, that's a really good question. That's a
Mm,
really good question. I would say
well,
absolutely not.
no. As far as religion goes, it kind of really depends on the denomination you're talking about because, like,
Right.
Catholicism, I think Catholicism probably beats out the
That's
entertainment
exactly
industry.
where I was gonna go. I went to the Vatican last year, and I was so pissed, because, yeah, they have some of the greatest art treasures in the world, and many of them, they commission themselves, and I totally get, you commissioned it, it's yours, no questions, and some of it is stuff that people made for them, and, they made it for you, they gave it to you, no question, that's yours. But what made me really angry was the Hall of Statuary because it's full of Greek and Roman treasures, statues and columns and artifacts from the Greek and Roman era. And the only reason the Vatican has it is because I don't remember exactly when in history it began. It was sometime, probably with the fall of the Byzantines until Mussolini. The Vatican was the king, the Pope was the king of Italy. And so, as king of Italy, he claimed for himself any art treasures that were found in the entire country. And when Mussolini came to power, the Pope was allowed to move to the Vatican and was allowed to have the Vatican as his own state. And
Mhm.
the Catholic Church moved into the Vatican all of these art treasures that had been gathered by the previous popes over the last few centuries. And there's this huge hall, and the artwork in that hall is it could support a small country for life. It's, there's that much priceless artwork in there that has nothing to do with the Catholic Church. They simply claimed it for themselves. And yeah, it just infuriated me that they won't share that with the world.
Yeah, I mean, Catholics, well, the Catholic organization is what I mean. I mean, the last time I checked, they had $1 billion fund just for paying off victims of sexual abuse at the hands of their priests. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I can, I I don't think that they have to report their income. I know at
No.
least here in the United States they don't. So there's no telling as to how much money they're actually bringing in. And I mean, there are some churches outside of Catholicism now. There are some churches here in the United States, they've actually gone to the links of like actually billing their church attendees like
Oh,
for
really?
tithes. Yeah, you can
Wow.
find there's been at least a couple of incidences where incidents, sorry. There's been a couple of incidents where some church congregant hasn't been tithing, and so the church noticed that they weren't tithing. However, they do that, and so they sent them a bill for
Mhm.
attending the church basically and not tithing. And so it's just kind of crazy how they do that.
I've heard of churches that publish in the bulletin who hasn't been paying their tithes.
Yeah.
So they don't bill you, but your name is gonna appear in the bulletin as a cheapskate if you don't do it.
Shaming your congregants is the way to go, church. Way to go.
Uh, but getting back to the sex scandal thing, one of the things that I also was infuriated at is several of the each diocese of the Catholic Church can be independent to a degree, and they are
Mhm.
financially independent, at least to a degree. And several of them have declared bankruptcy to avoid paying the sex claims. I know Chicago did. I
Mhm.
know I know Santa Rosa, California did. I believe Los Angeles did.
Mhm.
But there's been several dioceses that have declared bankruptcy so that they don't have to pay.
Oh, well, so like I feel like that's a result of it becoming public. So like this $1 billion fund that they had, which if y'all are interested and y'all want to ruin your night, there's this documentary called Mea Maxima Culpa. I'm not sure if I'm getting the title exactly correct. It was done by like the HBO documentary uh, uh, segment of HBO. But it basically it documents this um, one priest's predatory nature on deaf kids in this deaf
Mm,
school out in California. And they brought on these people that worked with the Catholic Church, like from within the Catholic Church, that handled all of this kind of stuff. And that's where I'm getting this $1 billion number from.
mhm,
Um, and so basically, before the spotlight crew or whatnot from that newspaper, I can't remember the newspaper name, but once that broke and like people started investigating the Catholic Church and their uh, um, illegal activities as far as this is concerned, um, before that, that's what the fund was used for. That it was
okay,
used to so that it didn't get out into the public. They used it to pay off people. So once parishes and churches were starting to get publicly investigated and publicly indicted and all this other stuff, I think that it's that at that point they started using the whole bankruptcy hole in order to
mm,
prevent themselves from having to pay out like all
mhm,
this stuff. They pretty much just had a fund that was there so that they could keep people silent
mhm,
about this so that it didn't blow up like it did. But
mhm,
luckily, some people were willing to turn a blind eye to the veneration of the Catholic Church and, actually investigated it. Which, if people haven't seen the movie Spotlight, that's also another thing that I think will open your eyes if you haven't seen it yet, because the I now I'm not exactly sure how true to reality the Spotlight docudrama is, but I totally believe that people were fighting them tooth and nail the entire way, like pushing back really hard, trying to get them not to investigate the story.
mhm,
And
mhm,
because you see that now, you see people doing that all the time now. Like, no, don't investigate it. We're going to handle it internally. This is between him and God kind of thing. And they want to keep it on the down low because they got to protect their church.
mhm. And another person who did a video along those lines that just infuriated me was John Piper. Um, I took a short clip from this video. He made it about 10 years ago, and I've broadcasted a number of times, where he is addressing the question, what should a woman do if she's being abused by her husband? And he spends over half of the time talking about, well, if he's asking her to sin, and what she should do if he's asking her to sin. And then after he gets through this long explanation, then he gets, but if he's just hurting her, if he's just, smacking her around once in a while, then she should endure it. And if it gets bad, she should tell the men in the church and let the church handle it. And yeah, yeah, I know. It's like, you just don't get it, man. You just don't get it. If he's just hurting you, I mean, come on, what's a few broken bones between friends?
Between yeah.
Yeah,
It's so crazy how disgusting these people can get, you
mhm,
know,
mhm.
with their rhetoric, and they don't see a problem with it. And
No,
they
they
and
don't.
they don't see a problem with it primarily because it's just what God wants. It's kind of like that whole, well, it's not that I hate gay people, it's that the Bible says that we should hate them, kind of thing.
Mhm, mhm. So God hates gay people, and God is love? Wait,
Yeah.
how does that work? God is love, but he hates people. God says, "Do good to those who hate you," so God is good to the gay people? He doesn't send them to hell?
Yeah. You gotta love that kind of logic.
Yeah.
Well, love, like, I guess I'm using that facetiously, because like the only thing that I can do with that kind of illogical, dumb shit is just laugh at it.
Mhm,
It's one of those things that it's just so bad that the
mhm.
only real response is to laugh about it. And that's what I have about a lot of things. And that's why, like, on my channel, whenever somebody says something pretty horrible, unless it's about a few topics, like if like recently, and I say this because recently I was doing a review of Brian Holdsworth's natural selection favors religious people video. And in that,
Okay.
he yeah, in that video, he basically, he represents mental health issues like depression as just traversing adversity. Like, basically, somebody's having a hard time, right? Like, Christians are better are adapted to have a bad time or traverse these adversities than atheists are, because atheists just feel bad about themselves, but Christians, they lean on God, is basically what his thing was. And so that really kind of set me off, because I've been diagnosed with clinical depression, and
Mhm,
people that minimalize that
mhm,
are just like, they just don't know what they're talking about. And so
mhm,
that's one of those sore spots that I have, because I've um been in that. I've suffered through that. And um whenever somebody minimalizes it like that, it really kind of gets at me, because I'm better now, but I still have to deal, because that's not like something you just rub out with some dirt. you know
mhm,
that's
mhm,
something that you have to deal with, like, for the rest of your life, just about. And so I can deal with it fairly well now, because I've been through therapy, and I've gotten the help that I needed. But somebody that has never been through that and characterizing it as, oh, you're just sad, like, that just makes me want to pop them in the mouth.
mhm, mhm. I've had the same issue, and I have been so much happier and less depressed since I quit being a believer.
Hmm.
And part of it was the whole women's issue thing, was constantly trying to subjugate myself and trying to tell myself that that I am an inferior being because I'm female. I never thought of it in those terms, but that's exactly what I did think, because I always come after my husband. My husband always comes first because he's the head. And that was part of it, but, the biggest thing was I really wanted to die and be with God. I couldn't wait to die, and, anytime I went to a funeral, I was jealous of the dead person. Why can't I die? I wanna die. And now that I'm an atheist, I'm finding out this is the only life I get to live.
Mhm.
I need to live this, and do everything I can to satisfy my own needs, wants, and desires, because this is the only shot I get at it. And
Right.
and that is such a freeing thought, and to say that I'm sad because of it is just ridiculous.
Well, and that's why I get so confused whenever I hear religious people trying to degrade like the atheist position by saying like, "Oh, well, where's the meaning in life?"
Mhm,
Like you don't have
mhm,
any meaning in your life. Like you don't appreciate life or something like that. And it's like I just don't understand that, because like if this is the only life you get, and this is the only experience you're going to have, isn't that gonna be more meaningful than, like, waiting for an eternal afterlife that you're
mhm,
supposedly gonna be going into? Like, I feel like that makes our experiences now so much more meaningful, in that respect. And I don't mean to say that religious people on the whole, don't have any meaning in their life or anything like that. But I'm just saying for me personally, and I guess I
mhm.
take it for you,
Oh,
I found
definitely.
way more meaning to my
Mhm,
life after I
mhm,
left religion. And I felt the same things that you did going through religion and everything like that. I had all the exact same emotions, but I have to say that um, uh, I definitely didn't experience the same intensity. I would say I think mine was a lot less, because I think religion teaches you to shame yourself, right,
mhm,
in order
mhm,
to, because that's what God tells you to in the book, right?
mhm,
But I feel like it's so much worse for like women and other marginalized people, because you have so many people reinforcing that, like, yeah, we're all shit, but you're less than shit. And it's like that's like putting like that's just grinding it even deeper
Yeah,
into it. And
yeah.
so I feel really bad for those that are in that position and are part of those marginalized communities, because I mean, me being a white male, like I know that I didn't have it as bad as other people did. And so I just I I hate that that's a thing that exists in the world.
We have a super chat question. It says, okay, but how are they going to balance that Jesus and the Pope both say the Old Testament prosecution attitude is out? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, maybe Frankenstein can rephrase
Yes,
it,
yes.
balance out that Jesus and the Pope both say the Old Testament person. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like maybe that both Jesus and the Pope say that the Old Testament dickhead God is out, or
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right that that's what um yeah, I heard a recent analysis that one of the things that Jesus was trying to say was that, the new covenant is here, the old mean God is gone, and there's a new loving God in its place.
Mhm.
Um, but I know that at least the fundamentalists would push back on that.
Well, so it's kind of a weird situation with that particular argument that they normally levy, because like if they come out, and they say, like, let's just say homosexuals deserve to go to hell or something like that. It's like, oh, well, what about all these other Old Testament laws? And then they pull out, um, you know, which apparently that's what Frankenstein was talking about.
Yeah.
They'll pull out the whole, oh, well, we're under a new covenant, but
Mhm.
we're not supposed to do all that anymore. And it's like, oh, okay, so that's not a good like thing. Like these other laws aren't good, but the one that says hate the gay community is fine.
Right.
And then what they do is they're like, well, there's different laws in the Old Testament. You've got like cultural laws, and then you've got these legal laws that were only meant for the Jews in this one particular time. And that's like the more societal laws for that particular thing. So like, don't boil a goat in its mother's milk. Like that would be one of those laws that don't apply now. And but
So we can boil
uh,
the goats now?
yeah, apparently we're perfectly fine with boiling the goats. We can also eat pigs, so bacon's
Right.
back on the menu
Mhm.
for Christians. But yeah, so they have a lot of different apologetic ways to get around it. But I think that ultimately that puts them in a really weird spot because they're having to specially plead for certain things that they like in the Old Testament that like that they personally like those things, but they try to say, "Oh, well, God says it. It's not me that's saying it, it's God saying it." It was yeah, maybe, but you're the one that's cherry picking those particular things because they fit your agenda.
Badger says, milk steak."
Milk steak? I
Yeah,
don't even want to
goat
know.
boiled in milk.
Oh, okay. I
Mhm.
got you.
Um, there was something I wanted to say, now I can't remember what it was. Frankenstein says we can only drink Jesus. No, you're supposed to eat him too.
Yeah. I think that's such a crazy aspect of like I guess Catholicism, you know, because if you're I guess the more traditional Catholics or maybe just a certain segment of Catholics, they literally believe that end up eating Jesus's flesh and drinking his blood. And it's like, and that seems normal to you? Like this is fine for you. Like
Did you ever
it's
read Frank McCourt's Angela's Ashes?
no.
Okay.
I
It's a
can't remember
really
if oh, go ahead.
it's a really good book. It came out 20 years ago. It's a memoir. It was so good. Everyone asked him to write a sequel, which he did, and the sequel isn't anywhere near as good, but it's about him growing up Irish Catholic, and he eventually immigrates to the United States. But he was poor Irish Catholic. His father was a drunk, was worthless, um, and they never had enough food to eat. He talks about stealing food and trying to get enough food to eat. One time he went into a bar and there was a guy passed out drunk on the bar and he had some fish and chips. And so he stole the guy's fish and chips. But he gets, what was it? He gets very sick at one point, and it's right when his first communion is, and he goes for his first communion, and he's very ill, and he comes home and he throws up. And his mom is up in arms. What do I do? I've got Jesus in my backyard. Jesus is in the grass in my backyard. What do I do? And so she has to run and call the priest and ask, what do I do? I've got Jesus in my backyard.
Oh man.
I think they told her that she had to bury it or something. I don't remember. What is stopping any theist from just admitting existence cannot be proved, but they just want to believe it?
I'm I'm
Um,
guessing uh, I'm guessing they mean the existence of God, admitting that
mhm,
the existence of God can't be proved.
mhm.
Well, I mean, so I think that it really depends on like the theist that you're talking to, obviously, because one particular tactic for many people is to gesture broadly. And it's like, what do you mean God doesn't exist? And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? And the gesture broadly is just, everything proves that God exists. So a lot of these people see that just anything existing uh, proves that God exists, and they will come up with different ways to justify that. There's the argument from the design. People see design, and so therefore they think that there had to be a designer, and they'll do that. A more subversive way about it is for people to be like, well, God is required for the natural processes to work, and in that way everything proves that God exists. So just the natural world in general is evidence of God because God is required for it. But the problem is that whenever they come up with these things, it's like all you have to do is ask them, well, like how is God necessary? And
Mhm.
I just don't think that people can generally come up with good answers, because they'll either come up with, well, who do you think did all this? And it's like, well, that's a leading question for one.
Mhm.
For
Mhm. You assume
two,
the answer.
yeah, for two, you're not really giving me any kind of way to distinguish between shit just happening and God needing to be there in order for it to happen. Like there's no concrete evidence that suggests that. And I feel like that's the best way. Any way that they come around to, you know, whatever their proof is for God, I think that they have to ultimately provide evidence that God is necessary for something, and
Mhm.
I just don't think that the arguments have held up, for
And
that.
this is where I'm scratching my head over Cameron Bertuzzi, who seems to have gone off the deep end with his syllogisms lately. And
Well,
no matter how many times people explain to him that he has assumed the conclusion in premise 1, he
yeah.
just doesn't get it. Um,
Cameron is a special, like, he's definitely a special case, I feel,
mhm,
of apologist online, because I mean, he's obviously got his sights set on grifting. And
mm,
anything that can help him grift, I feel, is gonna be valuable to him. So, producing the bad syllogisms that gets people, basically, complaining about him, shit
mhm,
talking him and everything. But then when people complain and shit talk him, then people that follow Cameron and like Cameron, they get in and they're like they got to protect Cameron, or they got to argue with people about how Cameron's right or something. And so that just gets him his reach. And
mhm.
so I know recently Cameron had put out like a community post about how he's going to be putting together better videos and all this other stuff. But I mean, really, he's just trying to put forward more, I guess, engaging content that
Mm,
people will engage with. But see, that
which is
engagement drives his organic reach, and that just means more grift for him. And so
okay. Because I was gonna say, I offered to engage with him and he declined. Um
I mean, Cameron would decline. And I mean, I say that, because uh, Cameron is very specific about who he wants to put out there on his channel. And so the only way that Cameron can continue to grow is if he puts somebody out there that people are going to want to watch. So
Yeah,
unless you can demonstrate your value to him in that way, then he doesn't see the value in putting you out there. So like he's not going to, and no offense by this, no, he's not going to engage with a commoner, kind
yes,
of thing.
yes.
And he won't engage with me anymore because he's shot past. So like
Ah,
there's no way that I'm relevant to him, like, at all. And
uh-huh,
so he's just never going to like acknowledge anything that I do. And so I'm perfectly fine with that, because what he's doing is he's grifting, he's cultivating his flock, and people that are just going to subscribe because they feel some kind of reverence for God. And so it's like, well, if I don't subscribe, then I hate God,
uh-huh.
kind of mentality. And so I think that that's the crowd that Cameron wants, because that's the crowd that will consume his content.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the syllogisms he's been putting out have been things like, if morality exists, then God exists. Premise 2, morality exists. 3, therefore God exists. And
Mhm.
I said, that makes as much sense as if I posted, if pizza exists, then God does not exist. Pizza exists, therefore God does not exist.
Exactly. And I mean, he puts that kind of stuff out there just because he can and
Mhm,
people will engage with it. I think
mhm,
that if people didn't engage with it, then he would probably stop with the bad syllogisms. But it seems to be great fodder for people that want to point out how ridiculous his syllogisms are.
mhm,
So I mean, he's definitely nailed the organic reach by being stupid, I guess, because everybody wants to be like, "Well, this is stupid."
mhm. Frankenstein says, "Oh, so sociopathy and greed, it's an act for Cameron then." I always say there's the believers and the manipulators, the sheep and the wolves.
Well, you see, so and I don't include Apology in this, but I feel like when you start doing this type of work, being that, you're putting together, um, videos for like, doing the YouTube thing and the activist, or apologist in this case kind of thing, I think that it's really easy for you to fall into doing things purely for, the grift, for, the ability to make you money.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
if anybody looked at my analytics, they could tell that I'm definitely not doing that.
mhm, mhm,
Of course, I have a main job. Like I'm an engineer by trade during the day, and so I don't need my channel to make money.
mhm,
And again, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody that's like doing this full time because I've got plenty of friends that I know that I speak with on a daily basis that do this full time. But I
mhm,
feel like the big difference between them and some of the other people that do this kind of thing is that while they are doing it for money, or well, as a job, I shouldn't say for money, but as a job, I feel like they've managed to strike a really good balance with doing the kind of stuff that they want to do, making the points they want to make, covering the topics they want to cover, but maintaining that what they need to in order for it to be their job. I
mhm,
think Paula Gia does a great job of it. I think Vice Rhino does a really great job of it.
mhm,
I think Jimmy over there on the line, he's done a pretty good job of pivoting from his what was his main channel to what is now the line. Um, and so, I mean, I think that it can be done, but I also think that it's really easy to fall into the pattern of you know only focusing on, well, what content will get the most reach and what content will make me the most amount of money. And I
mhm,
feel like
mhm,
there are some people that get into that and then they just start doing, regardless of their own personal ethics or regardless of how they feel about any particular topics, they start doing those topics because it will garner them the revenue that they need. And
mhm.
so I think that it's really easy to fall into that particular aspect of it. And it's really hard to strike a good balance between your content and being able to make money from it.
We're starting to run out of time, but there's one thing I wanted to bring up. It's a point that I had never argued until very recently, because reading Bart Ehrman's book Forged put a new light on it that I'd never considered before. And
Mhm,
that is, I've frequently argued about contradictions in the Bible, things that are impossible in the Bible, things that are demonstrably untrue because the archaeology and all of the data shows, the history shows that it's untrue. But there's one that's just absolutely obvious, a lie in the Bible, and that is Mark chapter 16, verses 9 through 20. Because even the Bible itself tells you that it doesn't belong there, that this was added by a later scribe. And what I'd never thought about before was Bart Ehrman pointing out that it's not just an addition by a later scribe, it's a lie. Because
mhm,
whoever added that intended to deceive people and did deceive people. He wanted people to think that this was the original text, and people did think it was the original text. And it's funny, I made this argument to somebody on Twitter recently, and the person said, well, they found the mistake immediately, and the note about it is right there in the Bible. It's in every Bible. And I said, no, that note wasn't added until centuries later. Do you really think that this scribe supervisor saw him made this mistake and said, oh, well, we'll just make a note that that doesn't really belong there? No, you would have told him to do the stupid thing again.
Well, I think that the longer ending to Mark is actually a good example of how the gospel writers, or the not the writers, but the later scribes, they were embarrassed by certain parts of the gospels,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
we know that they were embarrassed by it because they changed the gospels in order to remove that embarrassment. And the fact that there's no real post resurrection appearances in Mark, that was obviously an embarrassing fact. Like, oh, we've got Mark here. He doesn't have any post resurrection appearances, but all the other gospels do. Like,
mhm,
that's an
mhm.
embarrassing thing. And so,
Even more embarrassing is that the women told no one. How would the author even know about this if the only one that saw it was the women and they told no one?
yeah, exactly.
Oh.
I think that that's one particular aspect that it's hard to really, you know, um, explain,
Mhm,
being that the women ran away scared and told nobody. Like, how do you explain this? And
mhm,
so the longer ending to Mark really kind of wraps up a whole lot of things and provides some explanations. But that's, again, they were embarrassed by that.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, I was really surprised when I read where Ehrman said that the story of the woman at the well was added to the Gospel of John. I did not realize that until very recently.
Yeah, and then the same thing with the woman caught in adultery.
Oh, that one was added too?
Yes,
Shoot, I wish I
that
would have known that 12 hours ago or 6 hours ago. The only reason is because, Piper tweeted something about that, or else it was I don't remember, some apologist, and I treated it as if it was part of the original gospel. I would treat it entirely differently if I'd realized that.
yeah, the woman caught in adultery is definitely a later thing, later insertion. And the reason why we know this is because there are, I believe that there are other manuscripts that actually don't contain it, but are
Mhm,
like
mhm,
earlier manuscripts. And so we know that it was inserted later. And it's done for theological reasons. So you had these later scribes that were adding these things to it because they had theological messages that they wanted Jesus to have said or done, and so they just sort of manifested it.
mhm, mhm. I have to wonder, and I know there's no answer to this question, but I have to wonder what they were thinking. I mean, whether they were thinking, good, now Jesus really did say it because I said he said it, or are they thinking, well, Jesus had to have done this, so I'm just going to insert it because this had to have happened.
Mhm.
I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, I think that I think that later scribes, I think that they were only focused on, what would help the religion spread the most. And I mean, obviously I'm not like an expert in this, like, and I'm definitely not um uh I'm not qualified to really say what their motivations might have been, but I can imagine that they probably would have felt like adding these stories to it added, good theological messages that they
Mm,
could use
mhm,
to teach their flock. I feel like these were personal theological ideas that they
mhm.
felt were important to the faith to emphasize. And so they utilized Jesus in order to push it.
They must not have looked at the Bible the way I was always taught to look at the Bible, which is, that this is the word of God, that this was
Mhm.
inspired by God. They must not have looked at it that way.
I think that the transcribers, those that were adding the stories to it, I
Hmm.
think that they probably felt that as long as it was helping promote God or promote belief in God or helping people to believe in God, then it was ultimately good. I
Hmm.
know that I've heard a somewhat similar argument. I don't know if it was from like a Muslim, but or a Christian, but basically it was as long as if you're lying, but as long as you're doing it to benefit God, it's okay. And I'm not exactly sure where they get that, like if it's like from scripture or something like that, which I mean, I could see some places in scripture, like as far as like Old Testament stuff goes, where you could possibly get that from because um there's this one part in the Bible where God is he regularly communicated to his prophets, right? Well,
Hmm.
there's this one situation where God gets an angel, which I think Christians interpret as Satan, to whisper lies into the ears of all the prophets. But
Hmm. Hmm.
God selected one prophet to reveal his true plan to, while he had this angel lie to the other prophets. And so there's that story in the Bible, and I think that you could possibly finagle that in order to justify lying for God. And there might be other places in the Bible where you could justify it, but I think that I think that you can basically justify anything with the Bible.
Okay, we have the ultimate syllogism. And
Okay.
since we are now out of time, I think we will end with this, which is the ultimate syllogism from Mark Caesar. Pineapple on pizza equals love. Therefore, there is no God.
I mean, that's this God disproved right there.
We can all go home. There is no God because pineapple on pizza equals love.
I mean, honestly, it makes as much sense as anything that Cameron has put out there.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming and spending this time with me. I've really appreciated having you, and I've just really enjoyed what you have to add to the conversation.
Thank you for having me on Godless Granny. It's always great coming on here and just sitting down and talking with you. It's very relaxing, even though I'm sitting over here hacking my lungs up. It's been, the time has just flown by because I've been having such a good time just, chatting with you. So I appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, thank you. And thank you to everyone in the chat for the view, and thank you to everyone viewing in the future, and live your life.